book. Good catch. Recording in progress. I'm also the co-host of a podcast you all might like, Greater Than Code. Does anyone listen to that already? You might like it. Add it to your list. All right, what are we going to do today in this workshop? There's two halves. This one is about the first half, which is about LGBTQIA folks. In this first half, it is about an hour. First, we'll do why. Why do we want to be inclusive to LGBTQ people, and like, what does it even look like? Then we'll go through examples. We'll go through the whole alphabet together. And then you don't have to share this part, but I want to ask you questions where you can think about your gender-related traits that you might not have thought of before. Probably not in the way I'm going to ask you, because I've never seen anyone. You put numbers to everything as much as I do. All right, I'm going to use the term affected people in this talk to refer to anyone negatively affected by policies or social norms or microaggressions. And I'm using that instead of what you might say is the offended person or the hurt person, because they might not be offended or hurt. And I'm not necessarily talking about discrimination and all the connotations that come with that, but like if you say something that could have hurt someone, could have been a microaggression, I'm going to say it's an affected person. And it's all based on the classes and traits that you hear of all the time. There's a lot of them that we need to explicitly opt into supporting if we want to support them. Another thing about the word affected people I'm using is they're directly affected, because everyone's affected by racism and bigotry. But there's one person affected more by it, and that's whoever is receiving the racism or bigotry directly. All right, so that's just a term I'm going to use. It's just my word. We are not going to go into all of these today, but in general, for all the protected classes on the left, that's protected by like civil rights laws in the US. But there's a lot of things we care about for inclusion in tech communities like Women Who Code, including skill level, socioeconomic background, and a bunch of others. So protected classes is like hand wavy, a lot of them, but of course there's more. They're really just traits that people have. And you could discriminate someone based on any trait, even the color of their hair. It wouldn't be so surprising. All right, we're gonna do this activity, our first breakout, just to frame the whole night. I'm gonna give you some time, I'll put on a timer. Think about a time when you or someone you know made some mistake that directly hurt or affected an LGBTQIA person. It could be something like pronouns or an assumption you made. You thought someone would have had a boyfriend, so you asked that back in high school and you're still mortified about it because it turns out they were a lesbian, they didn't have a boyfriend. And just think of a time, any time in your life at work or outside of it, and I'll set a timer. You're very well-meaning. Cool. Context is really important. This is what it might feel like to you if you're trying to be a good ally. You're first like, okay, all right, self, don't let your biases and stereotyping instincts win. Instead, treat people like individuals. Yeah, got it, right. All right, but don't ignore their background experiences, like if they're made fun of for being gay in the locker room. Don't ignore that part. They're an individual, but they're in a context. And don't ask them about their background experience. And if you do, be careful about it because you don't want them to do emotional labor. And then it's instead just be good and know everything already. Just be magic. Like it's just like, kind of hard to navigate. You're like bumping walls left and right. And you're trying to be the best person you can be. And there's like mistakes you could make every step of the way. And how can you do your best? It's hard. I'm with you. I'm not making fun of anyone here. You're here because you want to learn and you want to help navigate this thing. This is how I think those walls we just bumped into a diagram. I'll go through one piece at a time. The goal there is at the bottom. I want to have the best understanding of someone else's experience, especially when they're affected by something that hurts them in some way. Start here. I want to avoid making any assumptions and letting my biases take play. That's content for another workshop. There's plenty to say about that. I do want to focus on their individual experiences. How do they feel when that was happening to them? But it's not helpful if we're just saying be colorblind. If they said it's hard for them, it's just hard for them, but it doesn't mean anything about the group they're in, because it does. Their context matters too. I have a little story here. I got a haircut a year or two ago at a gay barbershop. It's gay because only gay people go there. It's like a gay gym. DC has that kind of thing anyway. It's a thing. And the woman cutting my hair kept making RuPaul's Drag Race references. And she was saying, yes, I love that hair, and quoting this stuff to me. And when I sat down, I was like, I don't watch the show. I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't care about it. And she kept making the references the whole time. She was stereotyping me as a gay man who obviously would watch the show. And I was just like, The whole time. I didn't have any patience for her, and I never went back. That is kind of benign compared to a lot of stereotyping that can happen too, but it kind of hurt. I didn't want to be lumped in with that culture that I'm not a part of. Not even that it's a bad culture, but it's not mine. I don't associate with going to gay bars and watching RuPaul's Drag Race. I just never liked it. I think they're catty and mean, and I got better stuff I want to do, like play instruments. But anyway, she was just treating me like a member of my group and not like an individual, even though I literally told her I don't want to hear about that. She kept talking about that. But colorblind is a great example for this one. You don't just want to focus on the individual's experience and ignore the group either. We got to focus on their experience and context. If someone's saying it was hard for me to get hired as a Black man in this job at a white company with no Black people in it, and I'm not being treated well now that I'm here, it would be a mistake just to focus on, oh, you specifically and only you are having trouble, because it has to do with their experience being a Black man. And they're trying to tell you about their experience, and you want to include that too. So the best is if you can treat them as an individual in the context they're in. And you're here today, I hope, to learn more about the LGBTQ context and how to navigate that and be a good ally to people and understand a little bit more about that to inform how you see people. This is a new diagram I made specifically for this workshop. Are you following? Are you with me? Do you have any questions about it?
I love it and would never understand it without that explanation. So thank you.
Sure. If you only remember one part of it, it's the 2 green arrows. Focus on individual experiences, but even better, focus on individual experiences in context. And you can get to know the context. We'll cover that. I have a lot to say about all this. Anyway, this is the mental framework I have, and this is why it's hard to talk about and navigate, because it is stuff's going directions. Whew. All right, how do we learn about someone's context? Say we got it. We want to hear about that coworker's context so that we can relate to them better and understand them. Of course, there's a lot of ways you can learn. Articles and books and documentaries, that's the farthest from them. You can do that and they won't even know you're doing it. It just helps you and your understanding, but it's kind of depersonalized too. A little closer is workshops like this, where people share stories and you know a friend of a friend who was affected, and you might care about that a little bit more than an anonymous person. If you ask unaffected peers, that's a little bit closer. Like if you have a buddy at work or a friend you can talk to about race and gender issues, that's even better. And then the closest you can get to the people who experienced it are the people affected themselves. But it's emotional labor for them. And you have to make sure you ask for consent and maybe lean on not just that one alone and do the other ones too. This probably isn't surprising to any of you here, but what I want to add here is ring theory from grief applies to this. The person is affected, they're in the center of this circle. And in the grief theory, in this theory, people in the middle are most affected. Imagine someone's father passed away. The father's widow might be the most affected person. They're in the center. And immediate family is in the next circle out because they're affected too, but less directly so because they weren't spouses with the person for so long. And then the outside family is even farther out and friends farther out from that. And so if you're going to ask what's going on, you don't go straight to the widow and ask her about it. You want to ask someone else further out because you don't want to ask her to do the emotional labor, but you can send support in. So like information out, context out, but then you can send support into the center. That applies to a lot of issues. And so here, if I wanted to put for the information part, how do you learn? I would put the affected people in the inside, and that costs them the most, but it's the best you can get, the most granular stuff that relates to what's going on. And then the outside is further from it. Anyway, I think of this like, how close is this to the person affected? And it's a whole range. All of them are useful in different contexts. Cool. Since we're a small group, I'm happy to have you all ask questions as we go instead of having the checkpoints that I normally would do. Anything here?
I put this in chat, but I just want to like emphasize this. When we spoke about just the whole idea of this workshop, this little seed was germinated of you coming and presenting this workshop. You take full credit for all this wonderful information. this was at the Ruby for Good event in September, I believe it was. You used this ring theory to explain to me about how I could educate myself more about these kinds of topics. And I think this is really effective because grief is something that everybody understands, no matter who you are, what culture, what language you speak. That's a universal thing. And it's so relatable that using that theory to apply to this just was really helpful for me in understanding how to go about it in a sensitive way and not like do the emotional work, not making other people do that emotional work, because that's like, yeah, you definitely don't want to do that, be imposing or anything like that.
Yeah, thanks, Big. I'm so glad that resonated for you. I think about it a lot. Yeah, pouring support in and grief out. That's what people say about this. Thanks, Emily. Bye. Right. So that's how you can learn more. And workshop is one of them. I want to make sure I give you some LGBTQ content here today. We're going to go through the whole alphabet. Ask me questions if you have any along the way. Here's the simplest form. LGBT, lesbian is a woman attracted to a woman. Gay is a man attracted to a man. Bi is anyone attracted to both genders or all genders, as it's more commonly used lately. It's like pansexual, but we don't say that as often. T is trans, meaning you are not the gender you were assigned at birth. And these are two buckets here: sexual orientation, who you're attracted to, and gender identity, who you are. And everything kind of goes in these two buckets anyway. It's who you're attracted to and who you are as a gender. If you add the Q, LGBTQ, Q is an umbrella. This is how it's used in the modern day. Q is an umbrella, but it was a slur before. So some older queer people, as I might describe them myself in my head, don't like the word queer and they don't want to be called that. And that's okay too. I won't call them queer. But in my head, anyone who's not cis, gendered, and straight is queer. Anyone who's cisgender, meaning they were assigned male at birth and they are still male and they identify as male and everything, or female and they're still that. And then straight, meaning they're attracted to the opposite gender. That's not queer people, but everyone else is queer. Everything else. More letters.
Question.
Yeah.
Can you go back one? So for not queer, they are both cisgender and straight.
If they're not cisgender, they're queer. If they're not straight, they're queer.
Okay.
So a cis straight person is not queer.
Not queer. Okay.
And women who code is probably catering to anyone who's not a cis straight man over allies.
Gotcha.
Is that right? I'm sure it varies by chapter too.
Thank you.
Okay. More letters. I and A. I stands for intersex. I'll tell you a little more about that. It has to do with gender identity. And A is asexual or aromantic. And let's dig into those two because they're the less common ones. Intersex. How would you define gender? Some people say it's XY is a male and XX is female. That's one way you could describe it. But what if someone has not just those? They have 3 chromosomes, or if some part of the chromosome that determines which genitalia grow is swapped between them and they're not on the X and Y, and that happens. There's 100 examples of how gender is not actually so black and white. Another one is if you make testosterone, which you think, or you make a lot of testosterone, the amount that a man would, but your receptors for testosterone all around your body don't pick it up. And then you end up growing female reproductive organs. But you have the testosterone. So if you were going to say testosterone male, less testosterone female, that's not going to work for that person. So that's like all these gray areas. Intersex is the word for those. And you don't always know who's intersex because it's not a core part of their identity. But when we're talking about biology, this comes up a lot. And I'm sure some people it is part of their identity, but the people I know that I'm thinking of and I'll introduce you to later, it's not necessarily front and center on their profiles. All right, the A, LGBTQIA, stands for either or both asexual or aromantic. All right, to explain the difference between this, imagine someone who's super hot to you, but they're a mess. They don't do the dishes. They're like a criminal. They do terrible things. You don't want to live with them forever and marry them, but maybe they're really attractive sexually. Or the opposite, someone you would live with. I'm imagining like a friend of mine is a gay man who married a woman who he loved, but wasn't sexually attracted to, and they were together for years and had kids, and they've since divorced amicably. So he was romantically attracted to her, but not sexually attracted to her. Both happen. And for some people, it's even part of their identity. Like they might be romantic, fully romantic, like the average person, but just asexual. They experience very little sexual attraction to anyone. Or the other way around, where they are fully sexual, but they have no romantic attraction to anyone. And you yourself might be at 100% or 0% on any of these. And maybe you've never thought about it before. I have a section later where I'll go through one question at a time for you to think to yourself. It's a spectrum from 0 to 100, and gray and demi are words that help describe not 0, but not 100. It's probably closer to the lower side, closer to the 0 side. People use those. And if it's not important to you to describe how sexual or how romantic you are in general, you don't need these terms, but some people do. And some people use these words to describe themselves. Whew. Questions on intersex or asexual aromantic as terms? I have examples soon too. I'll show you people.
I have just like gray romantic and demisexual. So I've heard of gray romantic before. I think gray something, and it seems like there's a lot of terms that kind of are like further categorization. I don't know if that's the right word. Further clarification on something that's in that LGBTQ alphabet.
Yeah.
Are these kind of like things that someone just comes up with and it catches on, or are?
Oh yeah, how do they happen? Good question.
Yeah.
So people for whom this is important to talk about with their friends and lovers and family, they end up needing to say it, and they probably start by saying long sentences describing how they feel. And then if they find a word anyone's ever used, even if it's obscure, they can help shorten that. And so for me, I'll have you fill out like 0 to 10s for a bunch of things. And if it's interesting, if it's not quite at an extreme for you, and you wanted to talk about it, you might need a word for it to come up with. There is history to each word. If I think they've ebbed and flowed, there's more popular, less popular ones over time. And even if today, if someone said I'm demisexual, I'm not going to assume I know what they mean, because there's multiple definitions for each of them too. It's like 0 or like asexual might not mean 0 for a lot of people. It might mean very little, like 5%, 10%. I don't know. And if that's the topic of conversation, I want to understand them better. I'll ask more questions. I'm just trying to get you exposed to the concepts behind the words, really, but I'm starting with the words that are around just as your starting point.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
I will not quiz you on the words.
Okay, good. I'll put my flashcards away then.
This is my personal mental model of LGBTQIA and gender identity and sexual romantic orientation. And you're probably building your own, especially as I'm giving you more terms here. Like, where do I put this? How do I think about that? How do they relate? I don't even want to look at the top part here. I wrote this in GraphViz, by the way, which is kind of like Markdown for diagrams. I love that tool. I do want to talk a little bit here about the gender identity part on the left. So cis and trans, and male, female, non-binary, and then there's gender fluid, and even more, a whole bunch of them. I'm not listing them all here. Those are all a gender identity. So that's how you feel inside. Imagine you are a man who was assigned female at birth because you had the androgen non-sensitivity thing I described. So they thought that's what you were, but you really have all this testosterone in your body. And anyway, for whatever reason, you feel like a man, that's how you feel. But then you dress like a woman and like a little girl, because you're a girl, and then you use she, her pronouns, but your gender identity does not match. That's called gender dysphoria a lot of the time, when you have to and do have to present in ways that are not true to your true self. And pronouns, we need pronouns because we need to know how to refer to people in language and conversation. And gender expression happens because you have to wear clothes and present yourself in a bodily figure to people. So you are expressing your gender in some way. All clothes are some kind of gender expression. And they're both part of your gender identity, whether it matches or doesn't match. Whew. Concept. I can't wait to show you the examples. And then on the right there is who you're attracted to. So if you're straight or gay or lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, aromantic, any of those. All right, the examples. I think these will help a lot. I want to tell you about me. So here is a little bit about me. I own an instrument in every color. I can play Lady Gaga's Bad Romance on all of them. Recently, I picked up an accordion. This one's interesting. A lot of people don't talk this way. I'm culturally queer, but not culturally gay. I already told you I don't watch RuPaul's Drag Race. I don't yas at people or things like a lot of mainstream gay men do. Instead, I go to events like the queer trans fusion partner dancing events, where people with every letter from LGBTQIA attend. And like that space that's more queer is more my space than the gay one. Sexually and romantically, I'm gay. I'm not attracted to women. I'm cisgendered. My gender identity is male. It matches what I was assigned to at birth. And my clothing style is not super masculine. I don't wear camo and boots all the time. I wear like tight fitting, bright yellow pants with pockets, which puts me on the male side, unfortunately. Right, that's me. Before I introduce two of my friends, I want to go through this concept, which is ambiguous versus specific they. So pronouns he refers to singular male, she is singular female, they is plural generally. And then for non-binary people, a lot of non-binary folks prefer they as their pronoun. That's the pronoun they want everyone to use. But then if you ever don't know, everyone just says they. And I like to use this trick to get yourself to end up using they more often. Because if you ever don't know someone's gender, someone's pronouns, you can go with they and it's not wrong. It's English correct. And sometimes if someone who's non-binary tells you my pronouns are they, them, that switches from the right column ambiguous they to the specific they. That was a realization for me when I noticed that. That's a thing that happens in my head. And then I'm sure it is a specific pronoun I can use.
So you're saying that's grammatically correct?
Yeah.
English?
So imagine
I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's something that my mom is like, I just can't get it through my head. And if I like tell her this and show her this slide,
yeah.
I think that'll be like the switch to get her to like start thinking like that. I mean, Catholic school.
She probably uses it. You could probably trick her into using it. If you say like, my friend called me and they told me that it's a lot of rain on the West Coast now. That's happening lately. And your mom would say, oh, are they okay? Do you see it?
Yeah.
You didn't share what pronoun they were, and how could she guess? Although I don't know, she might go to he or she might default to one anyway. And if that's how she was trained and taught her whole life, it is hard to change. But grammatically, it is correct to say, are they okay? If you don't know their gender, you probably do it all the time without realizing it. Ambiguous they is such a thing. Yeah, nice link, Becca. I like that one. APA style guide. It says that you're allowed to use they ambiguously. I'm sure it does. That's what it would say. Right here, I'll tell you a little bit about my friend, Krista. Their pronouns are she, they. And that brings up a question. There's two pronouns. Which one should I use? The answer is either. They said either is okay. You can use either with them. But if you want to know which one they prefer, if there's a slight preference between either one, that's a pretty good question. Some people have a slight preference, but they include both because it's easier for like traditional older people to use the gendered one. But when I'm not sure, I go with they, because that also signals like I am willing to call you whatever you ask me to, even this less common, often harder to use one for a lot of people. But I don't know. So I asked Krista. I also asked them if I could include them in my presentation, and they said, yes, of course. I'm very public, and I'd love to share this stuff about myself. And this is all from their Twitter profile. They're a geneticist. They're a saxophonist. I met them from the queer marching band in DC, where I play this orange trombone behind me. They're a bibliophile. Ace here is short for asexual. They don't experience sexual attraction, or they don't experience much sexual attraction. I didn't ask if it's 0 or some, and it doesn't really matter to me. This is how they're trying to self-describe, and I got it. They're ace. They're also gray row, which is short for gray romantic, meaning they're not 0. They're like something between 0 and 100 for the average person. I don't know where, but anyway, that's what they want me to know. And they're queer, which probably means I'm not telling you every little nuanced detail of all these graphs, but there's other stuff in there too. Or just culturally queer like me. They also hang out in spaces like the band that has trans people and women and bisexual people, and every letter is in that band. Very inclusive. Here's another friend of mine from the marching band. Avi uses he, him pronouns. This is their Twitter profile. They say, I love rabbits, cheesecake, cute things. That's all stuff that comes up if you ever talk to him. He's a hacker, queer, trans, and non-binary. And he's also not listed here, but I know it, is intersex. I think his intersex, the cause of it is the androgen non-sensitivity. But I'm not sure, and it doesn't matter, and it's not core to his identity, and I don't need to know it to be able to treat him well and to understand where he's coming from. His context, like from that earlier diagram, his context is queer, trans, non-binary. That's what affects his life. That's what he wants us to know. And this last line, I want to ask him. I don't know what that means. I think he does white hat hacking, and that might be related, or is it something that rabbits would do? I don't know. I'm so curious. It'll be a good icebreaker later.
That t-shirt, it's probably white hat hacking.
Yeah, EFF, He definitely does white hat hacking. Sometimes I accidentally might use the pronoun she or they with Avi, and then I have so much to say about how to recover from microaggressions, but that's another hour-long workshop with practice involved. But what I do in short is I just correct myself. I say he, and I move on, and I don't say anything else because it's not a big deal. And I meant to say he, and I'll say he next time. And I don't make a big deal about it. If I made a big deal about it, he would feel uncomfortable because this happens to him a lot. And he said so. He doesn't want to hear it. He just wants everyone to do better, or at least just show that they care. All right. What about you? I'm going to go through these slides. You don't need to write anything down, although if you want to, you can. You don't need to share anything with anyone, although you're welcome to in the chat sidebar if you want to. I'm going to have you introspect. And this might be a little uncomfortable if you've never thought about these things, and that's okay. I want you to take notes and think about it later. A lot of questions. How would you feel on a scale of hate it to love it, -10 to 10, if someone you know used the pronouns he, him on you? Super good, super bad, neutral, kind of good, that's fine. Hey, where are you? How about she, her? Super good, super bad, kind of good, kind of bad, neutral. They, them? Same question. For me, he, him might be like a 2 or 3, I guess. Like, it's good, sure, that's me. You got it right, no problem. She, her, it's like a -1 or 2. Like, I'm not that concerned, but if you're doing it on purpose, you're getting it wrong, come on. And they, them is like a 1 or 2. Like, yeah, that's fine. If you're just doing the practicing the ambiguous one on me and you want to practice on me, it's fine by me. Some people though are really high in he, him and really low on she, her, like negative, like don't use that pronoun on me, especially a trans person perhaps, because they've been misgendered their whole life and they switched and they really want you to get it right. So if you are in the neutral and you don't get why people might have the strong negative positive feelings, that's okay. That's where a lot of people are. but some people do. Whew, I've got 5 more of these. This is deep stuff. How would you feel if you, for whatever reason, had to dress up in a traditionally male way? Like someone on the street you'd see who's clearly a man and dressing in a traditional male way. Would you love dressing that way? Hate it? It's kind of fine. How does it change if it's a female way? I don't want to dress in a female way. I don't want to wear any dresses, but I do want to dress in an androgynous way. So for me, androgynous is probably higher than male. I don't want to wear boots and camo ever. That is not my style. This is called gender expression. So it's how you are reflecting your gender to the world through your clothing and makeup and how you make yourself look. And it might match or not match your gender identity depending on your preferences or the day. Some people it changes over time. Next one. Do you feel more male or more female on a scale of 10 to 10? I don't want to negative either of them here. Like on the male side or the female side, do you feel like super, super masculine or super, super feminine, or kind of in the middle, neither really? Or halfway? Where are you? And then another question. This one's kind of weird for people sometimes. If this last question made you say like, yeah, I know I'm here and that feels right and good, then the gender binary applies to you pretty well. You might have a strong attachment to it. But if you're like, I don't even like this question, I don't really think about myself on a gender binary, that is maybe non-binary, or I think even that's a spectrum in my numbers and charts approach to this. It's like, how attached are you to the gender binary? Nope. Or yeah, this is fine. That's its own spectrum. For me personally, I don't know, halfway. Being male doesn't really reflect me that well. It's not a great proxy measure for things about me, like how aggressive I am or the things I like or don't like. It doesn't reflect that for me much at all.
Can I ask with this? Yeah. Because what Dominic said, what are we defining as male and female? Are we going by like societal definitions and stereotypes?
I love it. Good question.
Or our own definitions?
You're feeling the feeling people have when they decide they need more words, more letters in the LGBTQIA. Gender identity is really how you feel and however you define it. It doesn't have to be society and culture. That just makes it easier to grade on the scale. Good question. Well, how do you even define maleness or femaleness? I think we all have a sense of it somewhere. Most people have it. I do. And it is correlated to, but not the same as cultural expectations of maleness and femaleness. That's its own spectrum. Draw that as a separate bar chart on your sticky note if you're doing one. Yeah, good question, Meg and Dominic. Whew. Next one. How sexually, not romantically, they might be different for you, they might not be. Are you attracted to someone presenting as male or presenting androgynous? You really can't tell, or someone presenting as female? Negative 10 to 10, or any repulsive to you, or any super attractive to you, or any in the neutral? And same question for romantically. Is there any difference there? For some people, there really is a big difference. Like my friend Krista distinguished between, what was it, asexual and gray romantic. So for them, it's like, they're different. Whew, so much introspection. I think you need a break for a minute. I want to go grab some hot water for tea. And we're at the next section, culture change. I'm going to set a 3-minute timer and then I'll start again. Culture change. Culture change. So you all are on board with me, I hope. So you want to understand people who are affected by microaggressions, people who are affected by those things, and you want to understand them as individuals, and you want to understand them in their context, like that diagram. And now you know a little bit more, hopefully, about the context that queer people are in, at least what the variables are in the first place. So if you talk about it, you might be able to remember some of them a little better. So how do we change culture to make a welcoming environment for these people? Pronouns is one good one. So if I didn't notice earlier, and as a presenter, you can't say anyone's name. Isn't that weird? But some people here probably have pronouns in your Zoom name. If you are, you might be an innovator or early adopter for this group. And some people who, like everybody in the company is doing it, 90% of people are doing it, but some people aren't. They might be considered a laggard in the adoption of this. This adoption life cycle is often used for things like technology, like the iPhone. I had an early iPhone. I was probably an early adopter. And my mom's best friend, who's 80 years old, is definitely a laggard. She's using a flip phone still, not using it. The cool thing about this and how it applies to pronouns is even at the stage where early adopters and innovators are doing, putting pronouns out actively and proactively, making the environment one that has pronouns in the air, that changes the environment entirely. So if someone else wants to or needs to self-express so that people get their pronouns right, if even 10% of people are doing it, it changes the environment. It's not surprising anymore. Like, are you surprised if someone ever has red hair? That's only a small percentage of the population. Or if someone's left-handed, schools even accommodate for that with the left-handed desks. Some schools do. Anyway, it doesn't need 100% of people. And if you just put your pronouns somewhere publicly or share them proactively, it can change the feeling of the entire group. A group of 10, one person is 10%. All right, some techniques for getting pronouns shared in your organization more. One is in a profile like Slack. And if it doesn't give you a pronoun field, you can put it in your name. It's not that surprising. People see it. And you want it to be not that surprising. That's what your goal is here, is to help it be less surprising. If you have a name tag, I'm really bad at this one. I always just write my name in big letters. I'm very proud. I'm Casey Watts. And I don't leave room for the pronoun until afterwards. I have to like squeeze it in. I'm trying to get better at remembering to put it there. If you host events with name tags, consider having an example one, and that would really help people get the pronouns on there too. Another one is introductions to include it. So as you go around introducing who's who, make sure the first person or two sets the standard. You can plant them, and then everybody in the circle is much more likely to do it. Or you can require it. Requiring is tricky though, because some of the laggards could be people who don't want to share their pronouns. Maybe they're changing their outward facing identity to match who they are, and they don't want to do it at work. And you don't want to force those people to do that thing they're uncomfortable with. Or if there's someone who it doesn't affect them directly, they're just being stubborn, you don't want to make them angry about it either. We don't need 100%. 90% would be amazing. You don't even need 90%. So it's honestly, I think it's fine to have the laggards in this situation. Not everyone's going to have the iPhone or smartphone anyway. Whew. For a friend you have, how can you get better at using their correct pronouns? One trick that helped me a lot is to use their pronoun in every sentence structure. So you have to use he, him, and his, and there are other forms, I'm sure, that I'm not thinking of. And then every type of sentence is a new thing you have to relearn. Flashcards help with that. There are a lot of online flashcards, pronoun flashcards. You can type into Google. There's 15 of them. I don't know which ones are good lately. I used one 10 years ago a lot when they, them was becoming more popular. Also, any techniques you use to remember someone's name apply to pronouns too. And then if you make a mistake, recover gracefully, just correct yourself and move on. And I got a whole nother workshop about that. I'm not going to go into that today. One other thing I like to call out about pronouns while we're on the topic is, have you noticed we don't include Mr. or Miss or Mrs. in email signatures anymore? Most people don't. That's how we used to know what someone's pronouns were, and now it's gone. And that framing has helped me convince some older, more conservative people understand why we need pronouns in names, in signatures, because that it's gone. But in the meantime, it's fine for us if we want to be respectful, we can get around it by using the ambiguous they. But a lot of people still don't like that too. Just some context for you. Mr. and Miss are gone, and I'm thankful because I don't care about the formality of it. But I do miss having their pronouns available so I would know what to use. But I think we're in an even better spot now because they, them, and other pronouns that aren't he, she, or they are also available. All right, time for questions on this section, and then we're switching to the other presentation. The next presentation is about bystander to upstander. How can you help be an active ally? What questions do you have about LGBTQIA inclusion? I know I didn't cover it all. It's a very short time to say so much.
I thought that was awesome. And I was just wondering, I'm looking at your, oh, okay, cool. I was about to ask about links, but it looks like you shared it in your resource thing in the beginning. So
Yeah, true.
yeah.
I meant to screen share it at the beginning. That usually helps people. This is a link I shared, and I'll share it again because if you join late, Zoom will not give it to you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Zoom. I have 100 requests for Zoom to change. Here's the link again. Good. I hate every slide software. I've tried them all. I wrote a blog post about it in 2012 and it's still not better, almost 10 years later. So the last one was in Keynote. This one's in Paste app. I don't like any.
I will talk after.
Yeah, good. This app's fine. Paste by WeTransfer. But anyway, that's why it looks different. I already told you about me. In this half, we're going to go through the why. We're going to talk about the stages of allyship where you're at. And then we're going to talk about how you can help others. You can see where they're at and meet them where they are to be persuasive, to get them to change, to do the things we want them to be better allies. For this part, I'm assuming that you care about the people around you already, and you want to be your most effective, and you have time and energy for this. And if you don't have time and energy, don't do this. This stuff takes work. I'm not telling everybody to do this everywhere. All right, first section, why? Why would you even be an upstander? I want to go through some examples. One is gender. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Let's say you're at work and you notice a coworker misgenders another coworker. They say, he's the best. But they go by they, not he. So that's misgendering and you noticed it. What do you do? Example B, this one's about race. Imagine you're at a bar and you notice a friend asks someone non-white, where are you really from? Which, if you don't know, that's a microaggression. People hear that all the time and it hurts. It feels very othering. Example C, skills and gender related. Imagine you're at a tech conference and you see a man ask a woman, are you technical? That hurts because women get asked that a lot and men don't get asked that a lot at conferences. And it's surprising to a lot of men because it's very kind to ask if someone's technical before explaining something technical. But gender comes into play here too. Example D, you can pick your own. It could be the one that you talked about earlier. That's totally good too. Just be careful not to share identifiable information without consent, which I don't imagine is a problem in this group. That happens more in coworker environments. And I'm going to define microaggressions, although there's another workshop on microaggressions. Here we're defining it as tiny, frequent, and painful things that hurt people. And it's not necessarily intentional, which is confusing because aggressions sounds intentional, or at least the person's aware of it, and they're not always aware of it. I don't know that it's the best word, but it's the one we got. So tiny, frequent, painful, like paper cuts. Yeah, those are two related workshops. We're about to go through these two tools. One is the allyship spectrum from -10 to 10, active to passive, supporter, detractor. And then the other one is a sales funnel, but applied to persuading someone to change their ideas on something like pronouns. Solo activities, pair breakouts, full group, just like before. I don't usually do these two workshops together. We talked about an example earlier. What do you think if we just go with that one? Or would you rather have some time to talk about a new example here, 1, 2, and 3? Any feelings either way? All right, for time, let's stick with the example from earlier, whatever you talked about with your pair. All right, what kind of impact can one person have? Oh, we talked about this earlier too. I like how these dovetail a lot, although I didn't modify them to be the 2 in 1. If you have pronouns in your bio, even a couple people can change the environment, just like we talked about. 10% is huge. 2% is huge. And then I love this Lady Gaga quote. It's very quoted. There can be 100 people in the room and 99 don't believe in you. If just one person believes in you, it can change everything. It's even been immortalized in this like dubsteppy remix version that gets caught in my head sometimes. That's the name if you want to look it up later. But if even one person does it, it's not as surprising. If one person has their pronouns in their profile, suddenly if someone else does it, like fewer people blink. You could be the one. You don't have to be the one. I'm not telling you you have to do that to be a good ally. You could be the 2 or the 3 or the 10, but it's powerful if you're even just the one. Here's some homework for you. I'm not going to go through this too much today, but the power of one person doing something, or the power of 5% of people doing something, is really illustrated with these cute wiggly shapes. And this has to do with segregation and how if you want to be around diverse neighbors and enough people want that, then diversity can happen in housing. It's really, really an art. This blew my mind when I saw it. Nikki Case makes great stuff. All right, where do you stand? We're going to go through this allyship spectrum. This is modified from the book Full Spectrum Resistance, modified from another older book. So I didn't come up with this. I actually have a typo. Active detractor should be on the far left and passive should be in the middle. And I fixed it, but didn't update my slide. Oops. So if you're on the edges, it's active. If you're in the middle, it's passive. And if you're in the middle, it's neutral. I have a couple of things to point out about this diagram. One is that every step is important. If you can get someone like a cranky uncle at Thanksgiving to move from -6 to -5, it might not feel like much, but you're nudging him toward that direction. And that's something you should be proud of. It's hard to see it, but every step is important. Another thing I want to point out is that people in the middle of the spectrum are often invisible. If they're passive, you, like by definition, don't see what they're doing. They're not doing anything. They're not doing it, but their point of view, you don't know what that is. You can't see it. Invisible. All right, so I want you to grade yourself on the scale -10 to 10. Where do you land on the spectrum? Probably somewhere between neutral, passive supporter, active supporter, I hope, and we have to pick a particular issue because you can do this for a lot of issues. Pick the one that you used in your example. How active are you? Could you be more active? Where are you on that? Think about it to yourself a couple minutes. I'll set a timer and then you'll do pairs and discuss it and then come back as a group. But every breakdown. Next section is about how to be effective in helping change the culture of a person or even a group. We're going to go through these 4 stages, which this is a common marketing tool. AIDA, A-I-D-A, awareness, interest, desire, and action. I'll start with this image first, and we'll go back to the other one. So awareness is the top of the funnel. First, let me say what a sales funnel is. So a lot of people might buy your service ever, and they go to the top. A lot of people get your ad, and then a lot of people click on your website, and then a lot of people put it in their cart, and then a lot of fewer people on each step of these click buy, and then some people probably return it too. And that's all a sales funnel, and it's less each time. And that's why this metaphor is used a lot. Same is true for change. A lot of people are aware pronouns exist, for example. Pronouns need to be shared sometimes. They've heard that. But so just because they're aware of it, which is more people than the next one, doesn't mean they're thinking about it and willing to engage in it and talk to other people about it. And that doesn't mean that they want to do anything about it, that they've decided that they care enough. And that doesn't mean they did it. So like each step of the way, we kind of lose people, but you can help move people from one to the next. So for an example here, for the pronoun example from the second half here, so someone said, he's the best, but they use the pronouns they. So are they aware that the person goes by they? Maybe they're not. Maybe that's the root of the problem. And they're someone who's interested and they desire to do it and they will take the action. That's all you need to do is just that one step. They have to become aware of it. Next step, are they thinking about it? Do they care about this person in the first place? Maybe it's someone that almost ran them over and they misgendered them and maybe they don't care about that person as much. Maybe it's a coworker and they do care. If they don't care, that's another workshop. I don't even know really how to tackle that one. It's really hard, but most people do care about the people around them, thank goodness. Next one, do they want to do anything about it? Maybe they do care about their coworker. but they don't really want to show the person that they care. They're not that invested in this. Then they fall off right there. Or the next one, they do want to show the person that they care, but they just keep messing up. They just keep saying the wrong one. And that's a use case for something like the flashcards, like practicing. They just need support in taking that action. So here's some prompts, some things I might actually say to a person if this happened. For the aware stage, if that's what I suspect where they're at, say, I noticed you called them he. Did you know they go by they? Just asking, did you know that? Very open-ended. Next one, say, oh yeah, I knew that. With some people, I can be this blunt, and this is how I like to talk if I can get away with it. With close trust people, do you care how this person feels? Like my mom or my brother, I might talk to them that way. Or if I don't know them as well, I know you didn't mean to hurt the other person, like cushioning a little bit, but you can end up having a harmful impact. Like it really bothers them when you say that. That's the second, that's the I. Next one, I might ask something like, so I know you didn't mean to hurt them and you can have a harmful impact. Are you interested in helping this coworker feel like they belong to the team? Like they're accepted here and they're respected? Are you interested in doing work like that? Or are you willing to spend time on this? Are you willing to spend energy on this? Please do. I hope you will. Will you? Somehow you got to figure out if they have the desire there at all. And then action is, do you want help figuring out how to do it? I had trouble with this too, and this is what helped me. You can try to support them in that way. All right, that's how I think of the sales funnel, those 4 stages. But just like with the other spectrum, I don't need you to get it right which of these 4 letters anything applies to. The letters don't matter at all. The underlying concept matters, and that's like, where are they on their journey? And what are the stages? So I could maybe add 3 more stages for someone with pronouns, like aware of it in general, aware that it applies to the person, and whatever stages you come up with in your head for the situation you're thinking about is okay. It doesn't have to match Ida. But it's a good starting point. I like to use this tool to just get my head going. Often I'll forget about the awareness step, or I'll forget about the desire step until I bring this tool out. I find it really useful. What questions do you have about this Ida sales funnel?
I was really struck by your example scenario at the bar. You hear a friend ask someone non-white, where are you really from? Because I have one of my best friends that happened to her, and I'm seriously gonna text her right after this and be like, when can we talk?
Oh, good.
Because I've had people ask me that, as in like, oh yeah, what combination of heritage are you? But I think that means something different to people who aren't white. And how would you go through these Ida steps with that example if it was someone you knew asking that question?
Good question.
That one.
This is exactly what I was going to ask you to do, and I'm glad you're thinking it already. I don't mind talking about it in a big group, actually, since we're this size.
Can we do that?
So for that one, so first of all, the person who's affected, I don't expect them to do any of this. Maybe they have the time and energy and interest and they want to be effective. And then what I'm covering is what they would do in that case. But a lot of times if they're affected, they don't have the time and energy, or they don't care about being effective. They're being protective of themselves, and it's totally reasonable. But that's where allies like us in this example situation can come in and help. So we are there and we have energy and time and we want to be effective. What can we do? And this is honestly, a lot of this advice I'm giving here is counter to popular media belief, which is like, just yell at them and tell them they're terrible and they should have known it magically somehow. And that's not effective. And so one of my goals here with you is, how can you be effective? If there's someone closed-minded, or they didn't realize, or we don't know what's going on, how can we figure out what's going on here? In this case, I'm inclined to think they didn't know asking someone where they're from would be a microaggression. Maybe they don't even know what a microaggression is. So I might start there. Like, what's an example? If someone, my uncle called me Casey Macy when I was little, and I did not appreciate it. And he always did it. And it was so annoying every time. And eventually I got over it, I guess, but I don't appreciate it still that he didn't respect my boundaries. I told him. So for me, that's one, like, that's a microaggression in a way. It's a small, repetitive thing that hurts a lot over time. Someone calling me the wrong name. And it's different if I never spoke up, but I was like telling it. So I wonder, what story like that can we help this person think of? Anything that ever happened to them that's like that? That's a good starting point.
The stress you put on the I guess at the end
Yes.
is a little telling.
I'm over it and that I don't want to think about it anymore. I mean, I'm happy talking about it with you all, but like with him in the room,
Yeah.
I'm over it. I'm over trying to change his mind, and I accept that he's going to do it, and he doesn't respect me in that way.
So
That's
can you, would you mind backing up to the other example with the interest, so I can see?
Yeah. So
the
awareness,
question.
we were just talking about, are they aware that this is a microaggression? And it honestly, even just getting them to be aware of it and believe that it's a thing is challenging, and you've got work put up for you there. But let's imagine they got to the point they understand it's a microaggression. Microaggressions are a thing. They do hurt people. We got it. Okay. Are they willing to have a conversation about it? If they care about this person, maybe they don't care about the person at the bar, but maybe they did it to someone they care about. You can say, you care about this person's feelings. That's a good way to generate interest. If they care about people in general, that's pretty good. I like people who care about other people. But if they might not care about other people at a bar they've never met, and then I don't know, we got to find another plug for their interest. How do we get their interest involved here? Do they not want to be seen as an asshole? They might be interested in that.
I was about to say, would self-interest be an interest? Like,
yeah.
Hey, do you want to not look like a jerk? Because this makes you look like a jerk.
Yeah. The hard part is figuring out what they're actually interested in, because accusing them of looking like a jerk, it might not be the most effective. It might, depending on your relationship with them.
Yeah.
So like open-ended questions I might start with, like, do you know how that affected her? What do you think of that is a pretty good one. Just probing, trying to understand them. And that's what marketing books say to do too, is just search for understanding before you say, my product's the one you should buy. Like, understand the problem first.
Yeah, find the
where they're
pain
coming
point.
from.
Yeah.
Next one, let's think if they're in the desire phase. So maybe they're interested, they're willing to talk about it, they're willing to engage with you, but maybe they don't care about doing time and energy to work on it. They made this mistake once. They're not going to spend hours thinking about it to make it better next time. Rah, rah, rah. I can imagine people saying that. What was my example back here? Yeah, are you interested? That's really the question. Are you interested in spending time on this? If not, I don't know, can we increase their interest some or reframe it in a way like we were already doing? And this is where IDA, the I and the D get blurry for me a lot. A and A make a lot of sense to me. And then I and D. In like marketing click funnels on websites, it makes more sense than in people interactions. All right, and then the action, maybe they're like, yes, I care about that person. I don't want to do it again. But then they're not doing it. Then you can try to help coach them or get them to talk to someone about it. How can they work on that? But the awareness in this instance is the hardest by far, in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
yeah, Meg.
I was just gonna say, as far as the I and the D, the stuff where the separation comes in, just thinking about it, taking a step back and thinking about it once, because one can't happen without the step above it happening. So once that awareness is there, I think that can lead to, so now that they know what it is, it can lead to interest in this specific thing. Like, are you interested in learning more about this behavior that happened, in changing your interactions in these certain scenarios. And the desire may come in when you tell them, like, this is, it's kind of like the carrot, like these are the benefits, like this is your interest because it can lead to.
Yeah, I like the carrot and
improve-
stick model. I think that way a lot too.
Yeah,
If you
and
don't do it, these repercussions happen. And if you do it, these benefits happen.
that leads to the desire of wanting to improve, either for self-interest, for others, for both. And then doing the work leads to the action.
Yeah. I'm not going to bring it up right now, but if you see the page for this workshop, I'm using IDA there, and I have a section with like red boxes and green boxes. And that's the, if you don't do it, you'll have repercussions. If you do it, you have benefits. And that's when you're like, all right, I guess I want it. And then the next part is something like action, probably. And above that is like, what is it in the first place, the description.
Okay.
And awareness is, I messaged it to Meg at some point, probably.
Yeah, I think over the weekend.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to count that as the breakout. I want to leave room for questions at the end and more open discussion. And that's often my favorite part. Anything else on this IDA before I move on? For homework, I hope you apply this to a situation on your own. This also applies if you have an engineering culture change you want to make. You want people to start using Trello again because they stopped. Are people aware of the repercussions of having done it? Are they interested in talking about it? Maybe they're burnt out of the discussion. Do they want to have a smoother system? And then did they try anything? IDA applies to so many things. It's like persuading someone to do something stages in general. All right, a little bit more outro stuff, and then I'll go back to questions and discussion. This is my company, Happy and Effective. I founded it a year ago. I do a lot of training and workshops like this. I do a lot of coaching for leadership skills and product management, and engineering management, and executives, a whole bunch of things. I just want companies to be full of people who are happy and effective. That's my goal. So all the things that support that are what I'm working on. If you want to bring me to your company, I'd be happy to chat sometime. I do a lot of company work like this. At the end of everything, I'll send you an email with this form. Please give me feedback on how it went. What were your favorite parts, and what parts could I skip next time or do faster or improve in any way? You can complain about Zoom if you want. That would help me a lot. Please do that. And if you do, someone will get a signed copy of Debugging Your Brain mailed to you. I've got a crate of them in the other room. This is an applied psychology book, taking my background in neuroscience and programming, putting them together. A lot of great technical metaphors explained very simply for non-technical people even. And that's that. I'm going to stop sharing.